our scenario today, we are in a country with lots of opportunity that most people in this world do not have. And so my desire is, my hope is that today I can, and hopefully you as well, again, awake that desire to help those who are less fortunate than we are, whatever that is, whatever that calling is, whether it's, again, all of us can pray, some of us can go, some of us can give, and there's many different ways of giving. So let's just listen prayerfully and see what it is that God is trying to awake in your heart tonight.
Greetings to each of you in the name of Jesus. Good to be here, and I want to welcome you here. Thank you for coming, and thank you for sharing this evening with us. I want to say thank you to the local congregation for the good food, the fellowship over the time of our supper here. Thank you very much for that. And want to just say again to those of you that are here that Levi is here, will be here tomorrow as well. If you haven't already talked with him and made arrangements, he'll be happy to talk with you. Also, I wanted to mention earlier, there is some literature related to design. I left it on the table, on this side of the table on the left-hand side. The other side of the table has numerous pieces of Christian Aid Ministries literature, some newsletters, and other pieces that you may help yourself to. Pretty much everything on that table is free of charge, and you should help yourself to that. I'll talk about the books on the other side at the end this evening. Mostly what I have this evening is in the pictures. Someone can find the light switch and turn the lights off and go through the presentation tonight. I'd love to leave it open at the end. I mean, that's my intent for questions. So you want to think about that as I go. Maybe you came this evening with a question. Maybe I say something this evening that raises a question in your mind. Please feel free to ask questions. Am I coming through okay in the back? You can hear me back there? Yep, good, okay. Christian Aid Ministries started in 1981. Our intent originally was connecting with the Romanians in distributing literature for children. It soon grew to Bible smuggling and eventually to food parcel distribution among the Christians there. And then in the end of the 80s, it kind of exploded. Not literally, please, but I mean, it kind of really expanded and grew. Those early years, there was a lot of early growth. And then in the early 90s, or late 80s, when communism closed, or when communism ended in Romania, it branched out to include quite a number of other countries, like Haiti and later Nicaragua, other parts of Eastern Europe. And then eventually we went into Romania, expanded our food distribution in Romania, built an orphanage, and sent 100 bred Holstein heifers on an airplane to Romania. Kind of an unusual time for us, but that was 1993, and from that has come a major part of our work in Romania over the years, which is now changing. And in fact, this evening I'll say almost nothing about Romania, not that we're not doing anything there. It's just that times have changed so much, and so many programs, so many different places CAM is involved. There's just not near enough time in a little bit of time here this evening to be able to talk about all of those. So what I will do this evening is go through and give you a snapshot of a few of our programs. And then I'll leave it open for questions. Maybe you came hoping that I would speak about a specific program. I'm sorry if I missed yours, but I'm happy to answer questions for you at the end if you want. I'm going to start by talking a little bit about our Billboard Evangelism program. So around 2006 or 7, we reintroduced the Billboard Evangelism program. Actually, as early as 1975 or 6, David Troyer, an Amish man in Holmes County, Ohio, had the idea to put up gospel billboards. And he put up some billboards. This was way before cell phones. So there wasn't a phone number that was put on the board. There was an address. And so the idea was that if you wanted to talk with someone, if you wanted to communicate with someone, you had to pull over off the side of the road, write down this address, and then send in a letter. And some people did, amazingly. In 1981 then, David and others of his people that he was connected with in Ohio began the work of Christian Aid, what was then Christian Aid for Romania. And when that started, there was just not enough energy to put into billboard evangelism. But it didn't, it just went on a shelf. It didn't go in a trash can. And in 2006, when one of our staff needed work, that came off the shelf and was reintroduced. And today we have just a very unique and unusual situation where gospel billboards are being put around the world, or around the United States, on signs across the U.S. I don't have exact numbers, but it's somewhere over 1,700 signs are in every state in the U.S. Each of the signs, I kind of have this pattern of the top half of the sign being one color, and the message, the bottom part of the sign then is that strip with the logo. You should always see a CAM logo on every board, the phone number, and then typically a gospel or a scripture reference. Now, you're not always going to be able to see that, depending on where it is on the board, or where the board is relative to where you're driving, but it's there. It should always be there. What should be clear are two things specifically. The message should be short enough that you can read it and grasp it the first time. Not that you're going to fully understand it necessarily, but you should be able to retain the message the first time you see it. You'll see most signs are not more than 7 or 8 words. Max. That's the max. And even shorter is preferred, because the shorter the message, the better the chances that someone seeing it is going to be able to remember it. And then, of course, the phone number. You should be able to see the phone number and remember that. And that's key, so that if somebody has wants to call, can. So since 2006, this part of the ministry has grown quite a lot, obviously. All along, the goal was to put them in every state, and the reason for that was to spread out the messages as far as possible, for sure. But we also wanted to be able to tell people who call that we are in every state. We're spread throughout the country. And our intent there was to create a vision of the organization that it's broad, it's big, and it's there with a purpose. It's not just one sign by the road that might attract somebody along the way. And then, of course, the messages should be clear. And other thing is, we want the messages as much as possible to kind of stand alone. Meaning that if somebody drives past this sign every day on his way to work for 6 months, he shouldn't have to call somebody to understand what the message is saying. Or let me say it different. If he never calls anybody, the message is clear with what's on the sign. It can stand alone by itself. He has the opportunity to call if he wishes, but he doesn't have to. To date, over 1 million people have called our toll-free number. That's just a running tally that we have. More than 1 million times, somebody has picked up a phone and dialed in to that number and tried to connect with one of our staff. Now, you could say, so what is the value? There's a lot of money obviously being spent. Some of the boards we can get for a couple $100s a month. Some of the boards we might spend $2,000 or $3,000 a month for. And obviously that's a lot of money. Not only that, but some of the people who answer the calls are paid. Is it really worth it? And what we get sometimes is people who call and say, you know, really, you're wasting your money. Why don't you use this money and help the poor people? As though people who are spiritually poor aren't poor, right? But our phone team can respond, and often does to that, by saying, we understand. And there's a major part of the organization that is helping the poor people. This is our way of reaching out to people here in the United States. But even with that, do you know really what it's doing is a question that we're sometimes asked. Like how can you measure the value of what we're doing? So 25 million people a day see the messages. So this is one thing that we know it is doing. It's planting a seed into the minds of 25 million people every day. Now that's an assumed number based on what billboard companies call eye on contact. Depending on where the sign is, how close to the road, where it is relative to the road, they measure an amount of people that are going to see a sign. Obviously, the closer the road, the higher the count. The more people that are on that road, the higher the count, etc. But they have eye-on contact, and those are numbers that we use then to determine an estimate of how many people see it. Do 25 million people a day actually see it? I can't guarantee that. But based on billboard numbers, that's actually a relatively reasonable estimate. Tens of thousands call every year. And that number is actually 200 people a day that make that phone call on average throughout the year. And that fluctuates some. Parts of the year are higher counts than others. Summertime, for example, the counts drop just a little bit. But spring and fall, or at least winter, early and late in the year, the numbers are up. So somewhere around 200 people every day make that call. Of those 200 people, about half of them actually ring through and talk to a phone team member. So that's about 100 people a day that our phone team members have the opportunity to actually dialogue with and ask questions, and they can ask questions of us. Who are those people? Some of those are angry, obviously, and that's a small percentage. I would say that number is probably not more than 5 or 6%. It's actually a relatively small number. It depends on the sign. It depends on how many signs we have in specific areas, and it depends on a lot of different things. But in general, we get a small amount of very negative calls. We get some, for sure, but a very small amount. Of those that are negative, there are ways to soften their responses, and I've found it interesting that our phone team does a really, really good job of kind of diffusing anger and threats that come our way. Now, numerous people have made a commitment to follow the Lord over the years. This is not a number there isn't a number that we're actually keeping track of. We don't have a log of how many people over the years have said, have made a commitment to Christ, chosen to follow Christ, or repented over the phone. Many have, but we don't have a number necessarily. That number's not just terribly important to us, because you never know the outcome of something like that. So it's not necessarily a number that we keep track of. Now, I think a question that I would have for you this evening is, how many people in your mind would need to become converted and choose to follow Christ through this program to make it worthwhile, to spend the amount of money that we do? And I don't know what the budget total is, but it's probably somewhere over $5 million a year is put into the Billboard program. But how many people do you think, if 100 people chose to follow Christ in a year, would that be worth it? That would be one every 3 days or so. Let's say it was only 50, one a week. Would that be worth it? And would you be willing to say where that number should be? That would be a hard thing for me to do, I'll be honest with you. I'm not in a position where I could say, okay, it has to be 50 or we stop this program. You know what I mean? It's like, how do you ever come to some conclusion? Our goal is simply to plant the seed and allow God to take his word and multiply the seed and reap the harvest of the seed. And whether it's churches in the United States, whether it's families, whether it's couples whose relationships are healed, whether it's people who choose to end a life of pornography and choose to follow, whatever it is that's happening, it's something that we're content to leave in God's hands, convinced that God knows the beginning from the end. So that's the Billboard program. And, you know, my personal feeling, I'll just give you my personal feeling, is I think it's an excellent program. I think it's worth the money that is spent. I think God is using this program in incredible ways. I think seeds are sown that are touching lives, many lives, that we have no idea about, people that we never know about, people that we never see and hear about. God is using those signs and drawing people to him. I think it's a beautiful program. Another program that Christian Aid Ministries has, this is one that some of you may be very familiar with, is our disaster programs. And I'll just go through our disaster programs here just a bit this evening to give you a bit of an overview of the programs and what they do and what they accomplish. We have several. One is what we call rapid response cleanup or rapid response services. I think the community here is very aware, I assume, Dave, of what that program is doing. And I'm just curious, how many of you have ever helped on a rapid response program? Perfect. You know all about it. Yeah. Excellent program, going into communities where people's hearts are touched when life is really, really difficult. Another program that goes alongside that one very closely is what we call the chaplain ministry, where pastors and their wives travel with our rapid response teams and are there reaching out to people in the midst of their pain. And excellent program. We don't have enough of these. This is a program that I think comes alongside and really blends well with the rapid response. When you have someone who lost everything in a flood or a hurricane or a tornado, and I mean, everything they have is gone. Their house is a soggy mess. All their possessions have been saturated with a couple days worth of flood water. They had maybe no insurance or very little insurance. They have promises from FEMA that they hope are going to come to fruition. Most don't. And they're very, very low. This is a difficult situation. And for a group of men to knock on their door and say, can we volunteer to clean up the mess in your house, especially a flood? There isn't anything quite like a flood, in my opinion. You know, when a tornado goes through, it takes everything to the next county. A flood just simply saturates everything, turns the refrigerator upside down, and it's a mess. And there's often very little incentive for people to go back into those houses. When a group of 15 volunteers come along and say, we'll clean up your mess, can you imagine? That's an incredible testimony to those people. And volunteers like the chaplain ministry come along beside and help in a beautiful way. We also have the food kitchens. The food kitchens then go into some of those areas where life has been turned upside down. They can't cook in their houses anymore. They're maybe living in a hotel. They haven't had a good meal. They don't want to just go to McDonald's every day. And these food kitchens produce 2 meals a day, typically a breakfast and a supper. Good, solid meal where they can walk through the line and get a tray of food and are blessed and encouraged by that. I think it's a good program. And then also we have the DRS, or what we call disaster response rebuilding or disaster response services, where we go back into some of those communities then after the fact and help to rebuild their homes. This is a limited piece of the work. There's no way we can go into every disaster and rebuild every home that's been damaged in a flood or a tornado. But we'll go into the worst situations and the bigger projects, sometimes for a week or two, sometimes for no, it's usually more than a week or two. It's usually a winter. So it can be a year or two. It can spread into a couple years. Excellent program. Let me just give you a couple pictures of some of these. This is London, Kentucky, where Bonnie, the woman in the middle here, there was a tornado that went through. She was actually in the house when it went through, didn't think it was going to hit, so she went to sleep. And her son woke her, and she was in the house, but there ended up being a lot of trees down around the house. And volunteers came in and cleaned up all those trees. There are situations where local contractors offer to clean up trees in houses like this, places like this, for an unbelievable amount of money. I mean, I've heard some numbers that are hard to believe, but $20,000, you know, they'll clean it up for $20,000 and even more in some cases. And some people pay that, only to have someone like Christian Aid come along later and say, sorry, we'd have done that free of charge. And we do, numerous situations like that. Here's a man in Wisconsin. This man had been very, very discouraged even before the flood that came through Milwaukee, and was wanting God to do something. He didn't feel like he was sensing the Spirit of God working, and wanted to see some fruits of the Spirit in his life. The flood brought volunteers, and volunteers clearly displayed the fruits of the Spirit to this man, touching his life in a beautiful way. His comment to some of our people was, "You do more than restore people's stuff. You care about the souls of people." He sensed that and felt that. I mentioned cleaning out a flooded house. I have seen numerous pictures. I've helped with this myself. If you've ever been involved in this, you understand the horror of going into a house like this, especially into a basement or a crawl space. Yeah, it's unreal. It's service on a very different level. Serving God in a very unique and unusual way, being willing to get muddy. I remember being in West Virginia when floods went through there a number of years ago, and was meeting some of the volunteers. Went down to check out the project. Many of the houses there had maybe a 2-foot crawl space and a small door that got you into that crawl space. And there were men that would put on these white suits, paint suits, and crawl in underneath that crawl space with a shovel and maybe a sled of some kind. And they'd shovel mud on a sled, and somebody'd shove it back in again. And when those people came out, they were mud head to toe. It was unbelievable. That type of service speaks to people in unbelievable ways. When you're willing to go down into a space like that, where when you crawl in, you don't know, is there a snake in a corner or what? And men go back in there again and again and again. And then we have the food kitchens. And the food kitchens have just been a huge blessing, I think, where they simply go out, and what they do is prepare food for people. It's typically the New Order Amish that are doing this, do an excellent job of reaching out. Often they're singing as they're sharing the food, and that just has a way of touching the hearts of people. It's a very beautiful thing. Also, the chaplain ministry I mentioned earlier, this is a good thing. And then DRS rebuilding. Here our teams go into, typically it's in the winter, so it's going to be I mean, ideally, you'd think a project like this is going to be in the south where it's nice and warm and you can have shirt sleeves during the wintertime. Doesn't always quite work that way. Sometimes they'll run into snow or freezing rain or you name it. I mean, they can run into any kind of project like that. And it's not always quite as nice and easy as what it might seem. But here again, volunteers, I think, go the extra mile. Here's a dedication service of a house in Louisiana, a house that was built. Some of our staff and maybe some friends joined the group here. So the other part to the disaster program that I didn't talk about, and it's kind of disconnected or loosely connected, I suppose you could say, is what we call search and rescue. Does Oklahoma have a search and rescue team? You do? Okay. Where is its base? Here, right here. Okay, very good. I'm not sure that I knew that, Dave. But the search and rescue team is an amazing team. So it's in some ways it's part of our disaster family. In some ways not, just because of the type of work that it is. But here again, it's reaching people when people are at their lowest. And when you're able to touch lives in a time like that, that's incredible. That has a way of ministering that's hard to explain. And I have been tremendously encouraged by the volunteer work. God bless you, those of you that are involved in that work. I think it's a tremendous blessing to the work. It blesses people in many ways and is a big encouragement to people here in the U.S. So thank you for what you're doing. I want to shift now and spend the rest of the evening overseas into different projects and areas where Cam is working. I'll start first in the Middle East. And let's start in Yemen. Yemen is a country at the southern end of the Arabian Peninsula. It would be just east of Africa or the Horn of Africa. Yemen is a predominantly Muslim country, and it's split in half by two different ethnic Muslim groups. One is called the Houthis, and the other is called the Tutsis. And these two groups hate each other. They really do. And so there's constant conflict, and very recently just a very critical and serious civil war that's been going on in Yemen. Cam has contacts there and have been reaching into Yemen for a number of years. Now, this is easily one of the largest humanitarian crises that we have, and the longest ongoing currently is the crisis in Yemen. This war would have started about 2014 or 15, somewhere around there, so we're 10 plus years. What we're hearing from the international community is that more than half of the population needs help, and about 50% of the children under 5 are acutely malnourished. That's about half of children under 5 are living in a very serious, very acute malnourished situation. And CAM contacts are sending aid over into Yemen, distributing food, and simply reaching out to provide for the people there. So food is one way we can help, and we have been doing that for a number of years. In this case, we have a contact that is kind of in and out of Yemen, actually lives in Djibouti, which is a small African country just on the west side across the Red Sea, and travels into Yemen on a regular basis to make the contacts. Some of the aid given is actually going to Christian people there. We do have contacts with Christians inside Yemen that are actually receiving food, and that's a blessing and encouragement. We also are giving some of our gifts of like children's toys that we've been able to package and send, and then items like the hygiene kits. Thousands of hygiene kits are going into Yemen on a regular basis. And one of the big things that we've been doing recently that's making a difference here is setting up water purifying systems or water retention tanks. These systems are set up to catch water runoff from a roof and fill a tank. These tanks have got a filter inside that take care of the filtering the water. I mean, is water that serious? That big a need to the people there? Good question. Water retention tanks do a couple different things for the people here. One of the things that they do is they provide clean water, good clean water, where they don't typically have clean water for this type of thing. Typically, a young girl that's maybe 12 or 13 is the one who's going to be searching for water or carrying water for a family. So I don't know if we have any 13-year-old girls here tonight. Anybody like that? 12? 11? Yeah, back there's one at least. Okay. So you're the water carrier for the family, and you bring in all the water for the family. You got to understand that a family needs water for cooking, making food. They need water for cleaning, bathing, and not just cooking one meal. They're cooking dinner and supper if they have the food. And so there's a constant supply of water that's needed. It's not just something that a little girl does, and in a half an hour in the morning she has gone after her. Thank you, sir. She's gone after the water for the day, and that's it. It's more than that, quite a bit more than that. And so she's carrying water. So we can, with this type of system here, we can make it possible for young girls like, what's your name? I can't hear it. Joanna? Luana. Okay? Someone like that now goes to school because we've given that family a water retention system. Another struggle that many of the Yemeni people have is they're very poor. They barely have enough to eat. They have almost no income. And so they're in a situation where life is harsh, very difficult for them. And the father is constantly looking for ways to just survive. So if he has, let's say, a 14-year-old daughter, that daughter becomes a commodity for him. And he can actually sell her as a wife and receive a dowry for her. And that brings a little income into the family. Plus, it reduces the amount of people eating food in his family. And those two reasons give a fair bit of incentive for a dad. That's really hard for me to picture. Taking a 13, 14-year-old girl and giving her away in marriage so that I have one less mouth to feed. Not a problem that we have, but quite common in a place like Yemen. Syria is a country from Israel north, between Israel and Turkey, or between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Jordan is kind of in the southern, southeastern corner of Syria. Lebanon lies to the west. There has been a long history of war here as well. The Arab Spring, which started in 2011, ended up affecting the country of Syria. And the country rebelled against their leader, a dictator, and Bashar Assad. And the country rebelled. There was numerous groups inside the country, factions that have been fighting against each other, and more specifically against Assad, the dictator. That went on from 2011 until last year. Just last year, December the 8th, one of those factions gained enough strength that he overthrew the government and pushed Assad out and forced him to flee for his life, which he did, to Russia. At the time, Russia was in the middle of the Ukraine war and kind of lost interest in supporting Syria. and the Syrian military kind of gave out at that point. The president, the ruling president, or the man who took over, was actually from ISIS connections, very ungodly man, a Muslim, and a leader that has raised a lot of questions in the international community. I don't know if you follow the news, but President Trump has kind of made friends with him, invited him recently to visit here. There's a lot of questions about the future of Syria with him, but at least for now, there's a degree of peace. And it's open. Our people have been able to go into Syria for the first time in 15 years and actually be able to move in around the country, and other missions have been able to go in as well. There's still a lot of questions about treatment of Christians and other groups that he doesn't appreciate, but the future is very, very uncertain. However, a degree of people are taking the peace as positive and beginning to move back into their homes, only to find this type of situation where life is now much more chaotic than they've ever known it to be. Deep poverty in Syria. Many have lost jobs. The economy is in shreds. And it's basically at a new low with, if you can find work, you might make $1 or $2 a day. $50 is fairly average wage, which no family can live on that for any length of time. So still very dependent on international aid. CAM has had really, really good contacts in Syria, and we've been working in Syria for throughout this entire time, even shipping into Syria in recent years, sending food aid in, clothing, comforters, blankets, hygiene kits, and those types of things, and have been helping as we're able to throughout the years. So we've been helping in Syria. That's one of our ways to help. We also had good contacts in Lebanon, where many Syrian refugees fled to in the early part of the war, and been helping refugees there. Many went south to Jordan. We have contacts there and are helping refugees there as well. Many went into Turkey, and we've been working there as well. And then there are the IDPs, or those inside the country that have been displaced by the war, and we've been helping them as well. So we're doing what we can in a situation that's very difficult and very uncertain, just simply trying to do what we can in the situation. As the situation in Syria grows darker, the light of Christ shines even brighter amidst the hardships. This is a comment that we get from one of our contacts there. So there's positive to all of this. And as you listen to the next number of pictures and stories, there is a common thread. And even in the disaster programs and so forth, you'll hear a common thread through our contacts and programs, and this is what you're going to hear. In the darkest of times, in the most difficult situations, it seems like God uses those situations to speak to and to touch the lives of people here. And many are responding to Christ through that and coming to God as a result of that. And that's certainly true in places like Syria, Yemen, and other places. Gaza. In the Gaza Strip, Christian Aid Ministries has been working through our contacts in Israel and in Gaza. We actually have had some very good contacts over the years in the Gaza Strip. The devastation, the level of the devastation because of the Israeli army moving into Gaza is unbelievable in Gaza. I want to be very careful what I say here this evening. I prefer this evening not to look at this situation from the political perspective. I'm certainly not pro-Hamas at all. There are needs on But the level of suffering inside Gaza is extreme. Some of the worst that exists in our world today. Is the Israeli military justified in going after Hamas? It's not a question I even want to entertain this evening. That's up to God and what he allows in the situation. The truth is, inside Gaza, among many Palestinian people, are innocent victims that are suffering tremendously, unbelievably. Their houses have been completely demolished and destroyed. The economy in the situation is so low that there's almost no more hope. And they basically depend on aid that is coming from elsewhere, other places. People cooking food for them, like this soup kitchen. And Cam has some excellent contacts here, have had contacts inside Gaza, continue to work through contacts in both Gaza and Israel to be able to facilitate and to help here as we're able to. So food is one way that we're helping. We also have done a lot with water purification systems to give the people good, clean water that they can use. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about this situation except that it's a very unusual situation in our day. And it's my hope that we can maintain some kind of a peace treaty there, that eventually the people of Gaza can live and experience a reasonable lifestyle rather than what they've been forced to live with in the last number of years. Food for Afghanistan is a relatively new program for Christian Aid Ministries. Our focus here is going into the country of Afghanistan and simply providing aid for people there. We have contacts outside of Afghanistan who are working with people inside the country, and we have regular shipments, regular distribution time where we're going into them, or into Afghanistan for distribution. These pictures were taken back in February of this year and are at several different communities and distribution of both food and blankets. And there might be a picture or so mixed in here that would take you back to about a year ago when there was some food distribution there. The culture in Afghanistan is one where women are marginalized and pushed back. And that's revealed here in a couple ways. One is the full face covering, for example. It's just a way to remind the women on a regular basis that they're really second class and kind of unimportant to the people. Now, they do have situations where some of the women might leave their faces exposed or partly exposed like this, or even just a slit like these here. But in general, the women are considered a second-class citizen and kind of pushed back. Not kind of, are pushed back. They've also experienced a long history of war in this country, and more recently, floods and earthquakes that have impacted the people there. Here's some food distribution, as well as, no, this is food distribution, and I think this picture might have been taken last year, maybe about a year ago at a distribution. This is at a blanket distribution, and is a picture from earlier this year. We're purchasing blankets and bringing them in for distribution to the people. So the people in Afghanistan live very, very primitively. Like their houses are just, it's just different, especially when you get out into the interior of the country, away from the big city. Like once you're out away from the city, only the wealthy have glass in their windows, for example. A stove inside the building is maybe a hole in the ground. And you maybe put some wood, if you have it, in that hole. And you only really turn it on or start it when you're cooking food. And so you benefit from the heat in that way. These people don't have enough fuel to warm their homes to 65 and 70 degrees like you and I are comfortable with. And of course, air conditioning is something that's completely out of the question. Their primary way of cooking is by taking manure and mixing it with straw or dried grass and creating a small, like a patty, and then drying it down, and then they'll use that to burn for their food or for their heating. Now, to cook their food. Now, I don't know if smoking meat is something that's very common here. Do you have any grillers who are serious about smoking meat? Anybody like that? Yep, there's a couple, usually in every crowd. And, you know, you're going after specific types of wood to get just the right flavor and taste. Is that right? Yeah? We do back east anyway. All right? I don't know if you can imagine using manure to smoke your meat and what you think that might taste like. But you know the flavor from the smoke comes into the meat. You can taste it. That's exactly where these people are. In my mind, it's one of the poorest countries in the world. Some tremendous needs exist in this country. And what we're doing there is just a very tiny drop in the bucket. Here's some winter coats that have been distributed to some of the people there. And an older gentleman, hand on his heart, expressing appreciation for the items that were given. Easily one of the poorest countries in the world. Also a country that's predominantly Muslim, with no known churches in the country. There isn't a church house in the country of Afghanistan. Doesn't mean there aren't Christians. There are, but very few and very much underground. Being able to distribute aid and say that it's coming from Christians in the West has a huge impact on many of these people, and is a tremendous way to encourage them and let them know that people from the West care about them. And of course, you tell them Christians are sending food, they want to know why. And if you can tell them that they do it in the name of Jesus, they do it because they love you, those kind of things resonate with the people and become something that's very, very encouraging for them. I mentioned earlier that one of the early programs of Christian Aid Ministries was Bible distribution, and we have continued this program. Still continue to ship many, many Bibles into many different places. One of the terms you'll hear often is that we are shipping inside restricted countries, and a lot of the Bibles that we send go there. Many of these countries are Muslim and go top secret and are distributed at a risk. Not so much for us because we don't actually get involved in the distribution, but it's a risk for our contacts, and occasionally we hear stories of contacts who didn't survive because of distribution of Bibles. Some of these go to where Christians faced some of the most severe persecution, and still there are many people who are willing to do it. We used to do a lot in China. China's technology and facial recognition cameras have made it very, very difficult for us to do Bible smuggling inside China. Made it very difficult even for the Chinese people to do it. And the amount of distribution of Bibles in China just isn't what it was even 5 years ago. It's a changing landscape there without any question. But we're still able to get in where there is persecution, and Christians there are convinced that the more Bibles we send, the more lives are changed. And that's making a difference in these communities. And they know that because the Bible has changed their own heart, and believe that as we continue to distribute Bibles, it will make a difference. One testimony that we receive came from a Bible distributor. He was born in a Christian family, grew up learning about the Bible, and doing some Bible distribution, And at one point, this man heard of another church leader in another community that was killed. And this so discouraged him that he said, we have to stop this. Or he said, this needs to stop. And what he meant is we need to push to get more and more Bibles into these areas. Because if someone was killed for Bible distribution, we should have given that person many more Bibles before he was killed. And so it's his vision to do as much as he can now before the next leader is killed. And so he has regretted not being able to give more Bibles into areas like this. We have to do more, is his comment. And so he's currently trying to do all that he can, knowing that the Bible is changing lives there. I wonder if it's doing the same thing here. As you pick up a Bible, those of you that are older, and continue to read and study and apply yourself to is it changing you? What about the young people that are here? How valuable is the Word of God to you? Do you know that reading the Bible on a regular basis is going to change your heart? It's going to make you a different person. Obviously, it's more than reading, but reading is where it starts. And as you open yourself up to God, the living creator of the universe, and allow him to speak to you through his word, it'll change you. It'll make you a different person. And so I encourage you to see these kinds of stories, not as being obscure or way over there somewhere, but the same thing can happen right here, right in this community, right in this church, as you open yourself up to the Word of God. Recognize the importance and value of the Scriptures. I want to go to Haiti. Haiti is a country that has faced tremendous struggle in recent years. Currently, it's gang-ridden, and it's a country in chaos. At its lowest point in years. So this area right here, in the center, inside the red lines here, would be the area that is gang controlled. So basically, Haiti is like the thumb and forefinger of your right hand, okay, with this here being the border between Haiti and Dominican Republic right here. Port-au-Prince is the capital, and that's right down in the corner. And basically the gangs have spread up into the north, all the way over to Dominican Republic, or most of the way over in this area, and then control this area right here. And they control the seaport, and they basically control everything that happens. Outside of this area, life goes on much the way it always did, except that everything they do is more expensive. Because lumber, fuel, food, anything that's coming out of the capital or the gang area is coming at a higher cost because the gang needs money to operate. So where you could maybe years ago have been spending $2 and $3 for a gallon of fuel out here, it's now probably $7, $8, $9 a gallon. So life is just more complex, although it's relatively safe in those areas. And the country is just in a situation that's very, very unusual. Cam's base used to be just north of Port-au-Prince, up along the coastline here, in a village called Titayan. And gangs have overrun that base, have taken stuff from the buildings. Google images show that they've removed the metal from the roofs and have basically ransacked the property. We can't get there, or at least we don't want to, because of gang control. And there's a big question whether we'll ever be able to again or not. Hopefully, nobody's sure. In fact, at this point, it's very, very uncertain. CAM does have a number of projects there. One of the things that we're doing is we call for wages. We hire Haitian people on a regular basis to work. And we give them work projects like erosion control, digging trenches like this to keep water from eroding a hillside. Fixing roads, where they take They take and dig out the gutter of a road, move that dirt out on the road to fill up some of the gullies, and patch the road, fix the road in the process. Somewhere around 500 Haitians work for us on a regular basis. This is a number that changes. In fact, the people change. We might hire 15 for 2 or 3 weeks and then move on and find another group and give them work for 2 or 3 weeks, that type of thing. Providing wages for more people, spreading it out, giving them an income. We'll hire them again maybe later on another project, and so forth. And each one of those groups would have someone meets them in the morning, and a pastor will share a scripture with them, have prayer with them, reach out to them in a spiritual way, and challenge them. And through this, people have been asking questions and have been really, really encouraged by it. So the Work for Wages program is one way now to make a difference for Haiti. We also have the SALT program, and the SALT program is a program that has expanded in Haiti many, many times. I don't have the exact numbers, but it's close to 20,000 Haitians, I think, are on our program, in savings groups of some sort, working at fixing their businesses, improving their businesses, and improving their income for their family. Many of them are not in the gang-controlled areas. They would be in the outlying areas. And this is a program that has been tremendously encouraging for the Haitian people and a way of helping them to really help themselves in a sustainable type of way. And we also have the reforestation program where we're encouraging trees planted back into the soil to improve the ecosystem there. We also have a couple families that we've moved back to Haiti. Some of you may remember Sam Stolzfus, who was in Haiti during the kidnapping. With that kidnapping group, came out of Haiti in 2021, never felt like his work in Haiti was done, so he got married. They've since had a little one. He and his wife, little one, are back in Haiti and are overseeing some of our work there. Tremendously encouraging to see someone like that willing to go back. We also have several families in the north, up in La Sousse, in an area where we have a clinic, reforestation program, and a number of other projects that we're working with up in that area as well. The SALT program is one that's a big program there. Let me just finish the evening with by going to Ukraine and talking a little bit about Christian Aid's work there in Ukraine. This map shows a couple lines. So the Ukrainian border would be the Black Sea down through here. It goes up around the country of Moldova, comes all the way over, I think this is it probably here, and then across the north and down through. It came all the way over to here at one point and down into here. In 2014, when Putin invaded Ukraine, he basically took the Crimea, as well as a couple oblasts or counties out on the eastern side here. That was 2014 already. At the beginning of the war, he had taken quite a bit of land up in the north, all the way down around here, and more out in this area here. By about December of 2022, the pinkish line that you see here is about where the boundary was. And it's together here, comes over in here, up through here, and around here, something like that. That was December of 2022. The red line that you see shows the current front. And what that tells you is that the Russian military has only pushed into Ukraine this much in the last 3 years. That's it. Here a little, over in here a couple kilometers or two. That's it. So there's not been a lot of movement, although there's been thousands of people killed in the process of this war. Just zooming in on one area in Donetsk, where the boundary has changed probably the most. Meanwhile, there's tens of thousands of men who have lost limbs, and worse yet, been killed or been affected by the war. This man here has both legs gone and one arm, and is on a wheelchair with one hand left. Many people have fled the areas where the Russians have taken over, Some of them are close to the war front, but many have fled away. Some like this are living in apartment buildings that have been deserted by people who fled the country. In this case, this woman and her husband are living in a one-room apartment. Everything they own is in this room. This is their bedroom, kitchen, living room, dining room. It's not their bathroom. They have to walk for that and share that with a group of others. It's not their kitchen. Did I say kitchen? I think they go somewhere else and share a kitchen as well. So it's this type of situation where people once had a nice house, and Ukraine had been relatively developed in recent years, to now where they have this. Many people in those kinds of situations. So what's happening is there are churches throughout the country that have opened up their arms to people who are fleeing the war and taken them in. All over the country, hundreds of people are coming into churches because it's the churches that are getting some help from the West and being able to reach out and minister to people. And I got to say, they're doing a really, really good job of it, making it their mission, their purpose. And hundreds of pastors have risked their lives incredibly to reach out and minister to the IDPs, people inside the country that have been displaced, and touching them. There's a pastor working in Kramatorsk, right down in this area here, close to the front. He's probably not more than 15 miles away from the front. He's in an area where he hears the constant shooting and occasionally a bomb that makes its way over into their area. There's still about 70,000 people in this city. They don't want to go anywhere because this is their home. And to leave would only create problems for them. So there's a church that has a responsibility, and they're doing what they can to reach out and help. Not many of these people would be refugees. These are people who are just simply not willing to go or not able to go. Some of them are older, wouldn't have a vehicle, and just simply wouldn't have a way to get away and go. So they're there very close to the front line in a very precarious situation, but there's a pastor doing what he can to help, and we connect with pastors like that and provide food and assistance for them. Another area is this Slaviansk, which is very close to the same area. Very similar situation. Misha, this pastor, is just doing what he can, again, to stay connected to his people, to reach out to his church and encourage them and help them, support them where they can. Many of them have lost jobs. They don't have anything anymore. They're hanging on by a thread. Some of them wouldn't have electricity. It's cold in the winter, and they're headed into another winter. There are other situations like this where they have outside services. I have to say the pastors and church leaders in Ukraine are doing a phenomenal job in reaching out to minister to the people there. They're getting support from people like Christian Aid and other missions and ministries doing what they can to reach out and help them. Food, clothing, blankets. Blankets especially are a big thing. Huge need for that. Items like hygiene kits. Anything can be a huge encouragement for the people. Even something as simple as drinking water, just providing them with clean water is extremely meaningful and helpful for them. And of course, most importantly, Christian literature. And there's the kind of thing where people are hungry for. They're grabbing it, they're picking it up. All kinds of Bibles, Bible story books, any type of Christian literature, this type of thing is just a huge blessing to the people. Helena is the woman on the left. Her father was a Christian in the communist days, faced quite a lot of pressure, died when she was young. After that, her mother never talked much about him or about God. Her words, "Our experience has shaken us and brought us to God. At home, we didn't have time for God. Here, after all these years, I started to understand who He is and how I need to live." That's Helena, the woman on the left. Natalie is on the right. She says, I was an atheist before the war. I didn't even think about God. But when the war started, that completely changed. If it wasn't for the church and physical and spiritual help, we would have lost our minds. Tremendous opportunity here, and I really feel like the churches and missions from the West, Christian Aid for sure, are making a huge impact in the region among the people there. How long can this war go on? I don't know. How long will it continue? I don't know that either. Is there hope for some kind of a ceasefire? I would hope so. I think a couple months ago I would have felt quite positive we could see a ceasefire. And yet it's uncertain. It's very, very uncertain. And it's very hard to predict at this point. Still, I think we can hope. Most of all, I feel like we should pray earnestly that somehow God could bring an end to this ugly war. And I don't know, I'm not so concerned about where boundaries are at this point. This war has been so terribly horrible. It's unbelievable. The amount of deaths and destruction and devastation of property. It's time for an end to the war. Not only in Ukraine, but other places as well. It's estimated that 51 million children are living in refugee camps around the world. Children like this little girl in the Middle East. I think she's living in Jordan in a refugee camp, a Syrian refugee girl. There are others that are in camps like this one in Bangladesh, where about 1 million refugee ethnic Muslim people called Rohingyas are living in some of the worst and largest refugee camps in the world, packed into a small space. This is an area where there's constant monsoon rains and extreme heat. And the houses here provide very little protection for that. One of the largest slums in the world is in Mumbai, India. It's estimated that 1 million people reside on 590 acres. That's less than a square mile. I don't know if you can picture that. 1 million people on a 1 square mile area. That's in Mumbai, India. Think about that. Each person has about a 3 foot by 9 foot square space, or 3 foot wide by 9 foot long space. 1 million people. All around the world, there are millions and millions of people that live in extremely desperate situations, like Karachi, Pakistan, where it's one of the largest slums in the world, about 1.5 to 2.4 million, so large that they don't even know the population. Meanwhile, most of us live extremely comfortable in like we do. I'm one of you here. And compared to those who live in other places. I don't know what that does to you. I don't know if that's something that affects you or impacts you. What's that mean to you, to know that you live in a very elite part of the world and what you have is way more than most people will ever know? I think it should make us grateful. I don't think we should live like them. That's not what I'm suggesting. I think there's probably more that we can do to help them. And I say we when I say that. I'm not pointing fingers here at anyone. The needs of our world are vast. You can say in some ways that, they deserve what they've gotten. I'm not sure that I deserve what I've gotten. In fact, I'm sure I don't. What I have is what God has graciously given me. Somehow I live here. I don't even understand that. It's hard for me to reason that in my mind. But we live where there's so much, when many live with so very little. I just want to encourage you to be more grateful. And I think for the children especially, if we can just get a glimpse of how people live in other places, I think it would help us to understand how good God really is and how blessed we really are with all that we have. Cam is constantly looking for other people to help us. If you're here this evening and you've been thinking that you maybe want to do something sometime, somewhere down the road, you'd be interested in working for Cam, we have various positions, both here in the U.S. and abroad. Here are a couple opportunities where we're looking for people right now. If you know of someone that you think might be interested, send them our way. We'd be interested in talking to you. Out on the table, I mentioned it earlier, some literature. There are various pieces of literature that are there. We have the main newsletter, which if you're on our mailing list, you're probably at least getting that. But you have to sign up for some of the other newsletters if you're interested. There's a Billboard Evangelism newsletter that comes 4 times a year. There's the SALT Microfinance newsletter that also comes 4 times a year. There's the Biblical Stewardship Planner, that's quarterly as well. And then there's the Children's Corner. This is specifically for children. If your children are here this evening and don't receive this, take them to the table, ask them to, or sign up for them so that they receive the children's newsletter. This is completely free of charge, and we'd be happy to send it to your family if you wish. So children, if you want, get a hold of mom or dad afterwards and get them to help you sign up for that newsletter. There are also bookmarks out there for the children. Help yourself to those if you want. And then there's the special mailings, like the first alerts. You have to sign up for those specifically. The M-Posts, or what we call the emergency post mailings, are part of the newsletter, and you should get those on a regular basis as they come. Thanks so much for your interest in Christian Aid. Thank you for the invitation to come and to be a part of this here this evening. God bless you and give you wisdom as you seek him for the future. I'm ready for the lights. I want to just make a couple of announcements, then I'll leave it open for questions. I have on the right-hand side of the foyer a number of books. Typically what we do is bring only the very latest published books. On a trip like this, Cam published books, so all of these would be very new. They've only been published in the last 6 weeks, probably only, so they're relatively hot off the press. I'll just point out a couple of these. One is another one of Gary Miller's books. This one is on transportation in a global village. If you've seen some of Gary's other books, this is along the same line, but looks at all the different ways that people travel in the world and how different travel is for us. A Daily Surrender is a devotional by Pete Lewis. If you read Beside the Still Waters, you might occasionally bump into Pete Lewis. Pete's an interesting writer, and he has compiled 365 into a Daily Surrender devotional. And then also Faith Child. Faith Child is a fascinating story about a young boy that was adopted in Hutchinson, Kansas. And one of the interesting parts to this book is it weaves his story into the Haiti kidnapping story. And if you remember reading the book about the Haiti kidnapping, there was a story that the group that was kidnapped began to share the morning that they escaped. And it was the story about Grant Bontrager. And so this is Grant's story from his side, and it also includes just a little tidbit about that Haitian kidnapping included here, but it's more Grant's story. Fascinating, interesting, captivating book. Once you pick it up and start reading, it'll be hard to lay down. And other books, there are several children's books that are out there as well. They're all on a donation basis, suggested donation amounts. Drop the money in the basket. Lil's going to be out there to help you later. If you have any questions, want to make change or something like that, she can help you with that. Any questions? Okay. I'll sit down. Don't leave curious. If you have a question and would like to ask, we're here, not in a hurry to go anywhere. So if you have a question, don't hesitate to ask it. But I think I'll sit down. I did go a little longer than I wished. Dave, do you want to close? Maybe make some comments and close however you want. Thank you very much.
Thank you again, John. I think all of us have been touched, as we heard again, touched in different ways. And so let's not only be challenged, let's be changed. Let's remember this tomorrow and next week, next month, next year. We are humans, we forget very easily, or I do. And so, but if there's something that God has laid on your heart, whatever that may be, let's do it. That's whatever that is. Whether even being thankful, more thankful for what we do have. Let's make the changes God is asking of us, whatever that may be, whatever your neighbor beside you does. Let's go the direction God has for us. Okay, let's have a closing prayer and then we'll be dismissed. Lord, we come before you again. Thank you for this evening. Thank you for the blessing we received. Lord, we are not worthy of the richness and the blessings we have. Lord, we know those people in those poor countries are blessed as well. And thank you. Please be with them. Help them to feel your nearness, Lord. Lord, they often feel your nearness more than we do. We are surrounded with so much comfort, so much money, so many things that we think should make us so happy, and yet we can't even find you among all this noise and busyness and comfort so many times. Lord, wake us up. Help us to seek you every day again. Lord, whatever our age is, young, middle-aged, old, wake us up. Lord, none of us can do everything, but you ask each of us to do something and help me to be faithful to what you have called me to do and not look around and see if the others are doing what I think they should be doing. Help each of us to take whatever it is